So, you want a raise, hey? Unfortunately, you have no idea how to go about asking for one. In this video, I'm going to show you 6 steps that you can do to get that raise that you absolutely deserve. If you're new to my channel, this is Ange 2.0, where I show you ways to improve your life one day at a time. Now let's get into it. So step 1 is recognizing that timing is everything. So the proof is in the pudding here. You really have to look at yourself in the mirror and analyze how your work ethic has been. Look at your accomplishments. Look at how the company is doing. If you feel like you've really been crushing it at work and you're getting a lot of compliments or recognition from your coworkers, this would be a good time to ask for your raise. Now, one thing that you want to make sure is that this is something that you've been consistent with. It's not necessarily a one-time thing. Have you been showing quality work? Have you stepped up and been a hero for a project? Have you saved the day with this or with something that you created, an initiative that you've done? Is there a need that has popped up at work that you have filled in more than once? The other thing you have to look at is really looking at the situation of the company that you're working with. Is the company doing well, or are they swimming in debt? Something that you have to ask yourself. Are cuts being made? Are there less resources than there usually are? Is there talk about letting employees go or decreasing the budget for certain areas? Those are some things that you really want to keep in mind, because if there are budget cuts or money constraints, then this may not be the perfect time to ask for that raise. Step 2 is putting on your detective hat. So what this means is this is where you really want to do your research and analyze the trends that are going on with your job. So look at other companies and how much employees are making in that company with your job. You really want to compare and look at the average. It's really important that you're not just looking at one other company, you are looking at multiple. So sometimes you can find information on websites such as Glassdoor. You can find them on PayScale or the Bureau of Labor and Statistics. But you want to make sure you're checking multiple sources so that you can see what the pay is like for your job in other companies. So that way you can bring that information to the table and you look like you're prepared. Step 3 is preparing to show off your trophies. Now, obviously, I don't mean this in a literal sense, but this is where you want to start brainstorming and listing ideas of how you are an asset to your company. You want to think of things such as dependability. Have they been able to depend on you? Are you on time? Do you have a good work ethic? Do you produce quality work? Those are all things you want to list out ahead of time. Taking initiative is something that employers really value. And if that's something that you've done from time to time, then that shows that you are worth keeping around in the company. Along with that, you also want to flex any special skills that you might have that possibly others don't have. So for example, do you speak another language? That is something that is highly desirable in a work environment. Additionally, if you know a special skill or if you're experienced in an area that could be beneficial to the job, that will definitely work in your favor. I'm not saying that you necessarily need to have those things in order to get a raise, but if you have them, it will definitely work in your favor. Another part of this is to dream big, but you also don't want to be unreasonable. So along with the research that you've done, you also want to keep in mind that the more manageable that your raise request is, the more probable that you will get it. Part of this step is also writing out and listing the things that you have been good at. Now, I highly recommend that you actually do document all this and have it with you as a cheat sheet, because you're going to want to bring this to your conversation with your boss. It's good to have a cheat sheet with you because, number one, it will help you remember. A lot of times when we are asking for a raise or about to ask for a raise, it's totally normal to feel nervous. And sometimes when we get nervous, we might forget what we want to really say. Maybe we remember it later and then we're kicking ourselves. So by having a cheat sheet, by having a document with you, you can remember those things. Also, it's good to bring pen and paper to your meeting with your boss because you're gonna wanna write down their feedback, suggestions that they might have, or other important things from that discussion. So regardless, you're gonna wanna bring a pen and paper anyways, so it's a good idea just to have your cheat sheet with you at your meeting. Step number 4 is popping the big question. Now, before you actually go in to ask for the raise, you want to make sure that your boss has the right time to talk to you. You want to avoid busy days. If you know they're super stressed about something, you don't want to ask them on those days. You want to wait for a time that is much more convenient to the both of you. Even better yet would be asking them to set up an appointment to talk about your job duties and responsibilities. This also depends on how well you know your boss and if you feel like asking them in person would be better, or sometimes just sending them an email and saying, hey, I would love to schedule an appointment with you to talk about my job. When would be a good time to do that? I highly recommend that you leave the word raise out until you have the conversation with your boss. So at first, when you want to set up your appointment, you just want to say something like, I would love to make an appointment to talk to you about my job responsibilities and duties, because that is not a lie. You do want to talk about those things, more specifically about how well you've been doing so that you can get a raise, but we're leaving the word raise out until we get to the meeting. Step number 5 is it's showtime. So now you've booked your appointment with your boss, it's time for you to meet with them. And anytime you have a conversation with an employer, a client, anybody like that, you always want to start off with a positive statement. So start your conversation with gratitude. You want to say, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me today. I know that you have a lot on your plate, and this really means a lot to me. By showing that, you're showing, okay, you recognize and acknowledge that your boss is busy and that they're kind enough to talk to you and take some time out of the day to talk to you about what you want to talk about, right? Once you have expressed your gratitude and told them, thank you for taking the time to talk to me today, you also want to talk about why you appreciate your job. So, for example, I'm a teacher and I would say, thank you for taking the time to talk to me today. I know your plate is very full right now. But I did want to discuss a little bit about my job. I really enjoy working with students. You know, I've really enjoyed showing them how they can transition into adulthood. And by talking about a few different things that you like about your job, you're kind of buffering, you're kind of padding that raise statement that you're about to hit them with in a few minutes, right? So it's starting with positive, and that will automatically start the conversation on a positive note. Now, I do want to caution you here that you are not rambling, and this is why I suggest using your cheat sheet that you can refer to. Have your specific points down and go off of that, because you definitely don't want to ramble. If you do end up rambling, it might come off as kissing, which we definitely don't want. You want to value their time and you want to get your point across, but you also want to be brief but thorough. So again, an example could sound like this. Thank you, sir, for meeting with me today. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy day to talk to me. I really have enjoyed working here so far. I like working with the students. I think I have a lot of good ideas of how to help them transition into adulthood. So I really feel like I can bring a lot of good to the table. It's not too lengthy, it's to the point, and it's a positive statement. Next step is actually dropping the money bomb. Now, the big question here is, how do you tactfully ask for a raise? That can be really tricky because you don't want to just come out and say, I want a raise. There's a certain etiquette to requesting that, right? However, you also don't want to beat around the bush. So an example of what you could say could be, I really love working with students and I have a lot of ideas about how I want to implement these things in the future. Having said that, I would love for you to consider giving me a raise. In that example, I'm showing that I really do appreciate my job. I'm also showing that there's more good to come, right? But then I'm also saying I would like for you to consider. It doesn't sound as demanding as if you were to say, I want a raise. By asking if they could consider, it's still leaving the decision up to them, but it's direct enough to say that this is what your purpose is. Once you have stated that, now it's time to go back to your cheat sheet and start listing off all of the reasons why you deserve the raise. So like we said before, are you dependable? Have you filled in a need where there has been? Have you taken initiative? Have you gone above and beyond in certain projects? One way you could word this is by saying this: I would love for you to consider giving me a raise. As you may know, I have initiated the Sunshine Committee, which has brought a positive school culture to the school. I have also initiated different projects in my classroom that have prepared my students for the real world. I have also made it a point to communicate with parents frequently so that they're kept in the loop and so that they feel that they understand what's going on in my classroom. Again, refer to your sheet if you have to. It's not bad if you have your sheet and you are referring to that often. Remember, this isn't an interview. You're not being tested on how well you can remember what's on your paper. If anything, I feel like your employer would appreciate that because you are very intentional with the time and you have everything laid out ahead of time. So there's not a lot of wasted time going by. The next part is you want to kind of channel your inner talk show host. So what I mean by that is you're going to want to prepare for a discussion to be had, right? So you've made your proposal and now you're going to be hearing a little bit of feedback from your employer. Some things they may ask you is, how soon are you looking to have this raise? They might ask, if you didn't provide them with an amount, they may ask you, what are we looking at? Like, what is the amount you're requesting? They might want you to elaborate on some of your future plans with the company. Do you plan on staying long term? They might want you to elaborate on projects you have in mind. What they're trying to do is get an understanding of where you're at and what's going to happen in the future. Because to them, they're thinking, is it worth giving this person a raise if they're going to be leaving next month, right? So if they ask you some of those questions, it's because they want to know what they're getting in return. And step 6 is rolling with the punches. This is where there may be a little negotiation. The point here is not to be argumentative, but it's to find a common ground. Remember, you want to think the long game here. So if your boss comes back to you with a number that's maybe lower than what you expected, think again long term. Are you willing to take a smaller raise than what you expected if it means that you can come back to the table in a few months for a little bit more? Also keep in mind that it might not be up to your boss. There might be a human resources or HR department that they have to go through. But if you're able to pitch your reasoning to your boss well enough, then they can pitch that to HR and back you up that way. Let's pretend your boss is not able to or not willing to give you the raise amount that you want. Maybe a question that you could counter with is, what is something that you would expect from someone earning X amount of dollars? The reason for asking them this question is twofold. Number one, you are asking them those specific skills. You're getting that feedback so you know exactly what your boss is going to expect. So that way you can prepare yourself with getting those skills, with whatever soft skills or traits that they're looking for, so that later when you come to the table, you can say, I noticed that before you mentioned somebody earning this amount of money would have X, Y, and Z skills. I have since then upped my skills in these ways so that you're showing I met your expectations. The other reason that this works to your benefit is because you're kind of preparing them for another conversation in the future about this. So that way, when you ask them that question, they know that you're working towards that goal. And then you want to always remain classy. Regardless of what their answer is, you want to stay composed. Remember, Keeping your emotions under control, keeping your bearing shows professionalism. And part of this is a way for them to see how you react in difficult situations. Whether they realize it or not, in a way, they're kind of analyzing how well you deal with working under pressure, even if it's just a conversation in this case. It also wouldn't hurt to kind of give a hint of what's to come. So, for example, by saying, would you be willing to track my work quality for the next 60 to 90 days and have this discussion again in the future to see if I merit a raise at that point. Again, you're letting your boss know that this raise is important to you, that you're willing to prove yourself to get that raise, and that a future discussion is going to happen. In the end, asking for a raise is a nerve-wracking situation, but regardless of what the outcome is, there is a lot to learn from it. It helps you advocate for yourself. You have to know your worth. And depending on how the conversation goes, that might help you decide, okay, is this job worth it for me to continue and prove myself, or is it something that maybe isn't a good fit? If you know deep down inside that you are a good employee, you're a hard worker, and that you have a good work ethic, and you feel like you're not being compensated for that, you have every right to advocate for yourself, but also analyze whether your skills would better fit with a different company. It's a personal choice that everybody has to go through themselves. Also, after going through this conversation, you now have experience with asking for a raise, so next time you're better equipped with what to say and what to expect. With this preparation in mind, you may be surprised at how the conversation goes. You just need to remember to be patient, be persistent, and most importantly, be yourself. If this video was helpful to you, please hit the like and subscribe button so that this video can be available to other people who might be looking for how to ask for a raise themselves. Also, make sure you check out my next video where I show you even more tips on how to win at adulting. See you there.